Hello everyone, I'm here to share with you this Blender setup. There is no built-in Voronoi fracture tool in Blender, so I decided to try and make one with geometry nodes. What I wanted was to be able to see the fractures before they get baked in. The file is on Gumroad and I'll post the link in the description. Let's dive in. When you open the file, you'll see this cube that already is fractured. If we go to the modifiers tab, we'll see the geometry nodes modifier. We can deactivate the use self object and use any other objects to fracture. But we will go back to using the cube because it's faster, better for this demonstration. Here we can choose a surface material. We can choose to create or not caps, a cap material. Choose if we want to separate islands in case there are chunks made of several islands. And the realize instances checkbox, we need these if we want to apply the modifier and bake in the geometry. If we take the look inside the shader editor at the example materials, we'll see we have two attributes, the mesh ID map, which gives us a random vector for each cell, and the UV map, which gives us the original UV map for the surface faces and the generated UV map for the cap faces. Now let's take a look at the fracturing. Inside the cells tab, you'll see we have a point cloud mode selected for the fracturing, but we can also use a point collection. So if I choose this custom fracture points collection I have here, inside the collection there are just some empty objects. These objects will be used as a fracture cells center, and you can add more and move them and totally control your fractures how you want instead of using the random generated point cloud. Let's go back to our point cloud. This point cloud is just a random set of points. We can increase point amount, change the radius just for visibility, change the seed to get a different position. We have a maximum position and the minimum position value. We can move the points. We can multiply the position on each axis and move the points on each axis. And this is a cool feature. We can sort of stretch the fractures on each axis and get a different look. So it's a pretty cool thing to play with. I'm just gonna reset this to default values. So let's say that we're happy with the fractures, and before we go to the next step, if we go inside the geometry nodes editor, inside the setup, we'll see this big pink frame called bake static. Say we have quite a lot of fractures and polygons, and it's starting to calculate a little bit too slow. We can use this bake node to bake the chunks, and then we can move them a lot more easy and manipulate them faster. So just press the bake button. So now our fracturing is baked and we cannot change the chunks anymore unless we delete the bake. We can go to the next step. Inside the animation tab, I've added a few fun controls to do some simple, quick animations. We have movements, spin, and scale. And this is a master animation multiplier. So let's turn this up to 1. What we have here is two helpers. There's a move center and a fall off center. So the move center influences the direction in which the chunks move. And the fall off applies a strength multiplier depending on the distance of the chunks to this object. And here we have the core radius of the fall off inside which the strength will be 100%. And the feather will create a transition towards 0. So inside the move tab, we can choose a value and move the chunks how much we want. Inside the scale fracture, we can scale down the chunks towards 0. And if we also activate the spin, we have the spin tab in which we can choose how much the fractures will spin. We can choose the axis of the spin. We can apply some randomness to the axis and to the amount of spin. This is useful in case we want to create some quick, simple animation, not physics based, but if we want to, we can just apply the modifier on the object and use the geometry in a rigid body simulation, as I did in this physics scene. So we can see here that the chunks collide correctly and everything looks fine. So that's it. Hope you had fun. I hope you find this setup useful in your projects. And yeah, also cool thing is that you can go inside the setup anytime and you can change anything you want. Might look overwhelming at first, but it's just pretty much moving points around. So thanks for watching. That's it.